On today's show, it is part 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking all things Onyeka Okongwu, and it's coming to you right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1796 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday here in early to mid-September. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And now through September 22nd, all customers of FanDuel can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always would, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you might find your podcasts, from YouTube to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify, etc. Please like this video on YouTube as you're watching it, and please subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast. And I should say right now, this is part 2 of 2 with myself and Glen Willis talking about Onyeka Okongwu. So if you missed part 1, I recommend you starting there for the full conversation. It should be available in the same podcast feed right now. I dropped that at the exact same time, so part 1 should be there as well, and that's a good place to start this conversation. Anyway, what the concept is, if you've missed it before, is we'll dive into a single player on the Hawks roster in comprehensive fashion. Positives, negatives, offense stuff, defense stuff, future, current, all that stuff. We're going to give you the full picture of a player. Again, it's Okongwu on today's podcast, and part 2 is on the way. Here we go. I guess we should talk about rebounding, because that's always comes up. Part of that's the discussion we already talked about the size, and it is what it is. And I pointed this out. He's never been a great rebounder for a center. He had better numbers individually 2 years ago, his third season. Last year, it was back to kind of where he was before that. And as a team, and for me, it's team rebound numbers get undervalued. Like, how good you are as a team, especially on the defensive glass, matters a lot more than your individual number of rebounders.
Right.
But it's undeniable that the Hawks have always gotten worse on the glass when Clint sits and Onyeka plays. And part of that's that Clint's great at that. So it's hard to compare the two, because Clint is so good, like top 5 in the league good, that Onyeka looks worse. But they only got like 69% of the rebounds on defense with Onyeka. We'll start with Clint off the court, which takes away the 2 center laps too. That's pretty rough. That's not all on Okongwu. I just laid that out on purpose. Like, it's not on Onyeka, but it is a weakness of his, I think, relatively. It isn't as glaring, in my opinion, as it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But it's something you have to think about. There's always all these roster building, lineup construction questions you have. A lot of them are offense-based, but like defensively, you got to know you can get a rebound. Since you brought it up, it's an area where you got to think about that, especially with Onyeka. With Clint, he can kind of get you almost to league average, almost by himself on the defensive glass. Onyeka can't do that, so you got to think about it more.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember a conversation Stan Van Gundy had years ago. Well, I think it was right after he left coaching Detroit, or I think it was a podcast, and he was having a conversation with someone, and they said, as a coach, you want to hammer your team about 17 to 20 things every single game. You want to ask, I need this, and he's like, I learned as I got older, you only really have 2 or 3 things that you just can really nag your team about. And he said, my first choice was always rebounding. I need everybody to rebound. And Quinn, like when he would ask about games where they lost in the fourth quarter because they couldn't rebound the ball, he would say, well, you have to rebound as a team. He would use the term game rebounding, team rebounding. And so if you listen to kind of NBA coaches kind of really lean into that, they really do believe it's a responsibility. But I mean, Clint just carried this team for 2 or 3 years.
He has for years.
No one else ever had that. Right. So
I have one more stat on this.
Onyeka's never going to be that. So
no, I have one more stat on this, and then we'll go back to you. Basically, this is, again, there's some noise in here, but this is the team rebounds. Not just Clint's numbers individually. When Clint plays, so overall, the Hawks were dead in the middle of the league last year in defensive rebound rate, which is fine. They were at league average almost exactly. When Clint was on the court, they were the equivalent of like a top 6 or 7 team on the defensive glass. When Clint was off the court, they were a bottom 5 team on the defensive glass. Yep. It is that stark. Like, it might only seem like 3 percentage points, but 3 percentage points is the entire league span. Like, you're either the best teams are like in the 74% range on the defensive glass, and the worst teams are 69, 68%. That's the whole league span. So if you go in 3-4, like, it really was the equivalent of an elite or really at least really good rebounding team on the defensive glass with Clint on the court, and then it becomes an awful one when Clint sits. And that's not sustainable, and it's not Onyeka's fault. It's just the reality of what you have to think about. And right now, I mean, they're bigger than they were a year ago as a team, but they still don't have a ton of size at the 4. I mean, maybe if you go beyond Jalen, maybe if it's Larry Nance at the 4, that would be helpful. He's more of a 4-5, of course. He's more of a 5, I think. Maybe it's Don Barlow, who's similarly like a 4-5 right now. But if they go smaller and you go to DeAndre Hunter, who famously can't rebound, never has been able to, despite looking like a rebounder, he's not a rebounder. So it's something to keep in mind, I would say, and roster building wise. And we're not trying to defend. This is not a Clint Capella defense box. We've done it many times before. It's more about like what you have to think about when you're building this team. Because look, the backcourt is bigger than it was. But you still have Trey, who's never going to be a rebounder. He tries sometimes, but he's a negative as a rebounder. Bogey's really a great rebounder either. So like you got some smaller guys who are going to play a lot who are not rebounders, and that means gang rebounding. To your point.
Yeah, and the really really big I think philosophical point here is like if you ever want Onyeka to really test what Onyeka can do in all of these areas of defensive play, you have to just decide we're not going to just use Clint as a crutch anymore. That's just a decision, right? And we're
that's what I love with that. I mean, this is the year you think. I mean, look, I say it one more time. I know my earned reputation as like the Clint guy, and I get it.
Same.
Even I have been saying they got to make a decision. And I would say that for 2 years, mind you, but especially now that I think the Clint is terrible brigade is silly. But he's not the same guy, and he's only going to go down. He's not going to get better at this point. Age goes for everyone. Yeah.
He's played like, think about what 25,000 minutes.
Yeah. I don't want to put too much on it, but it's what it is.
Yeah, and that's why for me it's like I think it's time to see what Onyeka can do. I think it's time to make him the starter. You know, the last time Kevin and Tyler and I recorded, I liked what Kevin said. Kevin said having Clint makes it easier. Because, I mean, they're going to try to win games this year. And they're going to be, even if they start Onyeka, there might be 10, 15 games across the year where Quinn's like, I got to close the Clint. Because we got to, if we just rebound the ball, we win the game. If we just rebound the ball, we win the game. So the last 5 minutes, Clint, you're on there. And that's okay. That happens a lot with non-all-star centers in the league, right? You play matchups, you play situations and things like that. But Clint is a great kind of guy who just gives you a defensive floor you can rely on. I just need rim protection and rebounding the last 5 minutes of the game, Clint, get out there, that kind of thing. But for me, hopefully that's not something that Quinn uses like as a, kind of a security blanket, like all the time. True, and really can see what Onyeka can kind of do there. Because for me, it's like, guarding in space, getting on the perimeter, his footwork still has a little ways to go. Sometimes the angle's not just exactly right. Sometimes he's a tad late. Bruno played so hard in space last year defensively, but fouled constantly when he was out there, and
overzealous.
And I mean, me, I love players that play hard and are invested in stuff. And I hope Bruno can play in Toronto, this year and, find an opportunity there and all that sort of stuff. But for me, it's like, I'm right there with the chorus of people. It's like, I want to see what Onyeka can do. And because it's a big data point for how they continue to build the roster, because as you said, expecting Clint to be what he was 2 years ago, even right now, and to not anticipate the number of minutes he's played in his career and some of the lower body injuries, which almost all centers deal with, once they get to the age that Clint is right now, I think it's time. And if one data point comes out of the season is, wow, Onyeka played 55 games again, as a start, then that's something to learn as well.
Today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And what's something that you would love to learn? As an adult, do you have to make time to learn new things as often as you would like to, or was that lost somewhere in your childhood? It's great to have curiosity. You can seek it out with the folks at BetterHelp. Therapy can be helpful for everyone, including myself, and it can really help you focus on what you want instead of what others might happen to have around you in your life. That helps you to start living your best life. You can learn positive coping skills, how to set better boundaries, and so many more things. I know I have my own stresses that I deal with on a regular basis, and we can also benefit from getting things off our chest. If you think about starting therapy at all, give BetterHelp a try right now. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible to your schedule. That's a big part for me. If you're huge, like navigating time crunches, like I often am in my everyday life, that convenience and flexibility is huge. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time if you want to for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with the folks at BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. One more time, that place to visit is BetterHelp. That's Better, H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. For sure. And I'm glad that we kind of brought that full circle a little bit from the beginning of this conversation, because I think it's very reasonable. This is me talking, not speaking for Glenn. It's very reasonable to believe that Clint is the better bet. If your life was on the line in a game today, I think I'd rather have Clint. But that isn't the only consideration, nor should it be for a team. As much as I think the Hawks are going to be better this year than they were last year, this is a team that is young. They made future-facing moves this summer. Even if I like the DeJounte trade, it's a future-facing move. They got younger. They got their picks back, etc. They're not going to win the championship this year. So they're going to try to win games, but I think even if they think it's close, if they think it's close at all, like, I think you've got to start leaning into Onyeka, if not even just to learn. I mean, you got to know what you have moving forward. And while I've been vocal about liking the contract, I still think even if he is only a 50% of the time center like he's been the last couple of years, it's a totally fine contract. Even as a hybrid starter like he's been the last couple of years, like 25 minutes a game, totally fine. Good value still. If he's your starter, it becomes a home run because he's making like the mid-level for the next 4 years. So that's a really, really good contract. But if he's your backup, it's fine. So that's something to learn.
Yeah, it's interesting because just one little other observation is that you think about different situations and I think I've shared this before, but like Oklahoma City last year very intentionally sent two to the offensive glass all the time. Yep. And they gave up, I think they gave up, fifth, top 5 most opponent fast break points because they were sending to the glass. But they were gambling with their 5-out offense that you could not get organized and matched up and keep them off the offensive glass. And they would count on trying to win that matchup of we're going to get 5 to 8 more points on the offensive glass than you get in transition. And so when you think about that, it's like that is a nightmare for Onyeka plus Hunter. Like you can't do that against Oklahoma City. They will kill you on the glass. And that's where a guy like Clint, and even Nance is a really sound fundamental rebounder, but that there are some schematic things you will face from team to team to team occasionally. And the Oklahoma City is an extreme case where they make that decision very intentionally. That trade-off between our second chance points versus your transition points. And that's where, like, if you tried to run half the third quarter with Hunter at the 4 and Onyeka at the 5, they're going to get killed, You can't and so you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the offense because it's in a lot of ways the more intriguing side, because I think that the gap between he and Clint as far as like what you can do on offense is pretty wide, even as a Clint apologist. Onyeka's really skilled. You mentioned the finishing earlier on this, the finishing and the touch earlier. That's clear in the numbers. He's always been really, really, really efficient. They were really good offensively last year with Okongwu on the court in general. That's helpful. And it was basically, it's almost a caricature of what you would think. Last year, the offense with Clint on and Onyeka off was not very good. And the flip was true on defense. Like, they were really good, not really good. They were pretty decent defensively with Clint on the court and bad offensively. And it was the opposite with Onyeka, which makes sense. So I know our mutual friend Tyler Jones has been saying this a lot. But I want to know what you think about the opportunity to maybe make Onyeka more of a scorer and maybe make him more of a hub. Because he's shown flashes of being able to do that, but also it's not been a priority for the Hawks. Part of that's the way they run their team. Trey has the ball a lot. DeJounte had the ball a lot, et cetera, et cetera. Part of it's the Clint factor. Part of it's the way, all of it. It's all kind of thrown together. What do you think of the idea to like up his usage a little bit and have, because I think it's intriguing. I don't know if he can do it. I'd love to know now. But is that a interesting angle that they might be able to press the button on and be like, hey, Onyeka, how about using your face-up game? Like some of the stuff that he can do that he hasn't really been able to do a lot
of. I think it's important for them to prioritize that too, because he's just too skilled for his position to not leverage that as much as possible. And there is a question like, okay, how much do we want to scale that up? Do we want to, scale it up a little bit, see how it goes, and if that's going well, maybe some more. But for example, Jalen is a great passer in the short roll. Onyeka is I'll say, a good passer in the short roll. Jalen as a scorer in the short. Jalen in the short roll as a scorer is a little bit his decision making around his shot creation in the short roll. He just needs more reps. Like he's a little too much finesse at the rim and things like that. Onyeka just makes his floaters, makes his runner. It's crazy. Like,
I have the numbers.
Where Jalen's like Jalen's like, do I shoot the fadeaway? Do I go like Jalen? Just go freaking dunk the ball on this dude.
No, we agree, and we'll talk about it on Jalen's discussion. This is going to come up.
Yeah.
Too many fadeaways from Jalen. But no, to that point, I mean, you said earlier because you're 100% right. I'll just set some numbers at you that Okongwu was done from last year. He's been 86th percentile or better in all 4 seasons in overall shooting efficiency. So he's been elite in all 4 seasons as a finisher. Last year, he was 94th percentile in shooting at the rim per EPM. He made 72% of his shots in the rim area, which is out to 4 feet.
That's normally guys that are dunking everything that are in that.
Correct. And he's not doing that. You're right. I looked at the list too. It's a lot of guys who are lob catching. He does a little bit of that. But that's not his game. That's not. He's much more of it's actual craft. It's actual finishing. And he's also been underratedly, I think, because of Clint. He's actually quite a good offensive rebounder. Like he's not as good as Clint is, but he's really good. The numbers are really good on that. Last year was a little bit of a step down from the year before, but he's always been a pretty strongly above average offensive rebounder, which helps too, especially when, as you point out, he finishes everything around the rim. So I don't know if that's going to scale up a ton, because usually when guys take more shots, they make fewer of them. This is science. You got to find the sweet spot in there. But I think based on his 4-year sample of finishing and touch data, we could probably safely assume he's going to be a good finisher. So having more of him getting the ball as not necessarily an engine, but like more than just a play finisher. Because I think most of his attempts have been just pure play finishing. And I think that he can do a little bit more as like an actual individual creator, at least for himself. I'm like you, I'm skeptical of the passing as like a huge weapon. I think it's pretty good for a center for sure. But like, can he go out and score? I'm not a big points per game guy, Glenn, but last year it was like 11 points per game. Can I be 15, 16 this year? Is that doable?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yep. I think it is. I think, if that's what you prioritize, and truly, I mean, with centers, you're looking for just make the obvious pass, right? Now, I mean, nobody can just say do Jokic, just like Jokic is 1-on-1, right?
Yes.
And no one can do that. So no, we're not thinking that, but like that's what Bam does. Bam just makes the obvious, fundamental, basic pass. As offensive rebounder, I mean, Onyeka just kind of sneaks it. He's good at like just kind of sneaking in there, and when he comes in there, he's not so big that you feel him right away. So sometimes I think his size kind of works to that advantage. But the other part of his
too,
kind of
really good hands and long arms is very helpful.
But being a guy who's not really, really, really big, he doesn't have like the really big guys have to reload, to go back, and he doesn't have to do that. He could just go right back because he doesn't have a bunch of all this weight and all the size demanded. So he's good at just kind of putting the ball right back up. His feel in that area of the game is tremendous. I mean, it's way, way, way up there. And for me, if they're not leaning into that more, no, I don't want it to be like, wow, he's getting more shots a game than Jalen. That's not what I want.
No.
But the bottom line is that there are, I don't know, 8 centers in the league that can maybe keep him in front. When he was attacking centers in space last year, they could not keep him in front. Just generally, opposing centers could not keep him in front. He just dribble right around them, work around them, and maybe, I don't know, a little bit more dribble craft this year, maybe, depending on what he's been working on and stuff like that. But he's so quick and so solid with the basketball that, to me, is like, if they lean into more 5-out stuff and kind of give him that chance to attack. I recall last year, we recall last year, Bruno getting the fake DHO and getting to the rim with a dunk. Like, I want to see Onyeka do that 50 times this year. I think about Draymond being the guy that was doing that kind of first in Golden State, and that's the kind of action that I think really showing Onyeka, we believe in you. We want to lean into your strengths. We want to give you the opportunity to do things that you're good at. That makes a player feel like really, really good, and in my view, and I think that's something that would just kind of energize him and give them a chance to, Clint's finishing fell off last year. We all know that, right?
Definitely.
And Clint's never going to be the ball handler that Onyeka is, and never going to be the passer that Onyeka is. And so creating more of him as a connective player, connective offensive center, and then giving him a chance to self-create, especially when he has a good matchup, I think that's all stuff they should do a lot more than they've been doing to this point.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and you've heard me talk about them a lot in the past, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. But this time around, something a little bit different for you with FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL 10 ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then when the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game with YouTube TV and Sunday ticket. All you have to have is a Google account and a credit form payment, and you can cancel anytime. When you get there, you will also know that FanDuel Sportsbook is really easy to use. They have also they're looking for across the sports betting space from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, and much more. The app is really safe and secure at FanDuel. They cover the entire range of sports as well. That includes the NBA, of course. We talk about this podcast all the time. WNBA stuff. NFL is now in full swing. College football, MLB, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so many more sports beyond that. And now is an awesome time to sign up with folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. And to me, on that point a little bit, I've always thought they should do more of that and have them lead into that more than I value his three-point shooting. So I want to mention three-point shooting in a second. But to that point, like last year, he was 8th on the team in scoring. And you might think that's only because of minutes, but no, he was actually still 8th of those 8 in points per 36 minutes. So like it wasn't because he played less. He just was not a high usage option. Like last year in particular, I'm looking at the numbers now, his usage rate was down. Like he didn't take a lot of, and usage is a loud stat too, but he didn't have a lot of usage. It was mostly just play finishing. Like he had 13.7% usage of basketball reference last year. That was lower than Bruno. It was lower than Sadiq. It was lower than Clint. It was lower than Hunter. Like he's not a high usage guy on offense. Yeah. That could change. And I think it's much more intriguing, which might not be like obvious. I don't know about you, and I'm not trying to go off just the internet, but there's so much more attention paid to his 3-point shooting than there is to this topic in my experience.
Yeah. And he's way better at this. He's way better at the shot creation. Touch,
not even close. And I'm not trying to pick on Onyeka. I think it has been intriguing to see if he can shoot it. And Quinn's been encouraging him to do it. He took a lot more threes this last year. It was actually funny. He took 16 total threes in his first 3 years. 16 total in 3 seasons. And last year he took 69. Yeah. So he took 4 times as many.
Yeah. It's one of those things where a guy worked hard on something, so you show him some love. Say, okay, you worked hard on that. We're going to give you some opportunities to do that.
And it's useful. It's also useful.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
I think he was like 38% from the corner, and I think he made 1 above the break three.
I have a stat in front of me. So it's crazy. He was 22 of 50 in the corners, 44% according to
44%. Okay, even better.
44%. Not a huge sample. It's a pretty small sample size, but still 40%. And he was 1 of 16 on above the break threes.
Yeah.
So there's noise in both of those, I'm sure, but like he's a pure corner 3-point shooter. Quinn, they laugh when they design him for the bench always goes crazy. They usually were designing him to like take 1 a game. Like out of a timeout, they would set up something for Onyeka to take a corner 3. Yeah. He'd take it. Either he made it or he didn't, whatever. But that is still more of a this is going to sound unkind. It's more of a circus act than it is an actual part of his game right now. It's still like he takes 1 per game. And that's fine. Yeah. It's useful, but also it's not a priority for me. Would it be great if he could come out and take more of those this year and make a decent amount of them? Sure. But it's not like he has to have that. For me, it's always been a bonus.
Yeah. For me, I think as a coach, I would imagine the thought process is if my center is taking corner threes and that helps me get the other team center out of the paint, that's helpful.
Why you do it.
Right.
Yes.
If it's 1 a game and it's not really impacting the other team center just staying in the paint, then it's not as valuable to do that. Right?
He's not being guarded. If you watch him, I watched a few of these back to before this. They're not guarding him. No one's closing on Okongwu's court. Nor should they at this point. He's not proven to be a weapon there. So if you're the opposing center, you're like, go ahead, man, take it. It's fine.
Yeah. So that's the thing for me is like, and if he could, I have no idea if there's any likelihood he can make a few more, above the break threes and stuff. But to me, the big fork in the road is: can we use this skill to get the other team center out of the paint? If the answer is no, then it should be something that you go to special situations. And it is nice to give your players a chance to do something fun and kind of lean into things, give them a chance to do things they've been working hard at. That's all positive and constructive. I don't think you're going to run any late game shots for Onyeka
just to be like that, but I am totally fine with him taking the same amount as last year or more. It's fine. Yeah. I am not knocking it. It's totally fine that he took them. and the corner three was an effective shot. I mean, it's a small sample, but 44% is 44%. Like that's a positive shot
for sure
on that sample. Now, I just don't think there's not really a lot of evidence that he's going to become this huge weapon. The form, like we don't have to dissect it, but it takes a long time to get off. It's not exactly smooth. Like I am skeptical of Onyeka being a high volume 3-point shooter at any point. And part of the appeal, I guess, the theoretical appeal of him becoming more of a shooter, quote unquote, was that maybe he could play a little bit of 4. But like he can't play the 4 if that's the 3-point volume that he has, especially next to Clint. If a different center, maybe long term, like him and Nance, I would be kind of intrigued by. And maybe we see that at some point this year.
Yeah, because I mean, basically, Onyeka and Nance are kind of same level shooters right now in terms of volume,
similar.
and right.
Yeah,
and that's why I think that should they at some point move on from Clint, they can kind of maintain more continuity. If it was Nance and Onyeka
on both ends. I mean, the section
exactly.
I don't forget this. There is a school of thought that I would have been open to, even as the Capella guy. Like if they had moved Capella post Murray trade and gone into the season with Okongwu and Nance, they're not exactly the same player, but they have a lot of overlap, Okongwu and Nance, to where like you could do a lot of similar things and it would make a little bit more cohesive as a team. To your point earlier about different systems, Capella is not going to suddenly change, but I think that Okongwu and Nance are like kind of, I don't want to overstate how similar they are, but they're quite similar both in size, skill set, etc.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's like, if a coach could be like, okay, well, we're going to run a completely different offense when Onyeka's on and when Clint's on. Like, do you want that's hard, right?
It's hard.
Sometimes that's the right thing to do. But with Onyeka, you're like, Onyeka can shoot a little, Nance can shoot a little. Onyeka can make good, solid connective passes. Nance can make good, solid connective passes. Nance can handle the ball a little bit. Nance is great in DHO and just, a good processor with the basketball and trustworthy with the basketball. Those are all things you can say of both Onyeka and Nance, and where when Clint's kind of trying to turn the corner after missing a DHO, everybody's like, how's this going to end up, and so that's the thing that's kind of there too. But for me, I want to see way more. It's funny, like Bruno's used to, like Bruno was playing back to the basket post basketball like it was 1985 at times last year down the stretch. It was just, I mean, for me, the season was kind of off the rails at that point. It was just like, okay, this is kind of fun, and stuff. But with Onyeka, it really is face up, a center who can't keep him in front, attack him, get to the rim, right? But going back to the corner 3, the other thing with the way the Hawks were constructed last year, if Onyeka misses that corner 3, they are dead in transition defense. Your center is sitting in the corner. Your center is sitting in the corner, right? And you've got Trey or Bogey or whoever kind of, and so that'll be different this year too. Like, Dyson's good in transition defense, and they have other guys that are going to be able to kind of cover that as wings and stuff. So maybe a little bit more tolerance for that in that way.
Yeah, I agree for sure. We can start to wrap it up. I want to make sure we talk about for a second Okongwu and Jalen, who we mentioned a couple times already in this conversation, but that's one of the big topics is like they play so well together, and they do. I will note that last year, so 2 years ago, their numbers were absurdly good together. It wasn't a huge sample size. It was Jalen's first kind of rotation minutes, but it was great. It was immediate fireworks. They played awesome together. Last year, there were moments, but the overall numbers actually was surprised how like middling they were. I won't give them all to you because it would just take a while, but they were just okay with Jalen and Onyeka last year. They were still better than when they were split up, generally speaking. They do fit together, but I do wonder, to your point, I mean, eventually everything comes back to starting lineup, which I hate, but if they do pull the ripcord and go with Onyeka game 1, minute 1, I think him and Jalen should play a lot together on purpose. Okay. And so we won't do a whole rotation breakdown, but it feels like they should be not explicitly tied. I think Jalen will play more than Onyeka for obvious reasons. I think Jalen will be playing a lot of minutes this year in general, but I would go out of my way for both of them, honestly. I don't think Jalen and Clint are the best fit together, never have. And I don't think Onyeka and Hunter or Onyeka and maybe Nance is better, but like I would just love to see them play a lot together intentionally. And I wonder, we've seen it sometimes, but I think for me, it would be high on my priority list if I was Quinn rotationally to kind of say, all right, let's get 20 minutes a game of Jalen and Onyeka playing together. Like most of Onyeka's minutes, more than half of Jalen's minutes, and let's see what we have here, because I think they play off each other so well. And for Onyeka's sake, as this determinative season for his future and for the team future at center, Jalen's in Penn as starting at the power forward long term. So that partnership is going to be important no matter who's there. And for Onyeka, it could also be like mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about their numbers last year. I think one of the reasons their numbers weren't as good last year is that DeJounte played point guard down the stretch, and he's more. I mean, and DeJounte played some good basketball down the stretch individually, right? There are other times he was just flat out tired and he didn't care. He's still trying to carry the team, and in a way you admire that, and stuff like that. But I mean, when Jalen and Onyeka are sprinting the floor, good luck, right? Good luck with that, right? They're both fast. They both have great hands. They both, can kind of handle in tight space and things like that. And then coming into this year, Jalen's such a good head-to-head passer. Dyson's a great head-to-head passer. We know Trey is one of the best in the league. Getting Onyeka sprinting, and that's the other thing is like, Onyeka might only play like 7, 8 minute stretches and sit down because you're just asking him to sprint the whole time he's on the court, and being with those passers matters. Yeah, I mean, the other aspect is if you want to make Jalen plus Clint work, or even Jalen plus Onyeka, another one of their favorite ATOs was the 4 or 5 pick and roll at the nail. They probably ran that 15 times last year, maybe more if I went back and kind of looked. But, getting Jalen some opportunity to kind of work with the center kind of in that space, especially with Bogey on the floor, kind of really having the gravity that he provides. And so there are some specific things you can lean into that work with Jalen and Clint. It's a shorter list than what you can do with Jalen plus Onyeka, for sure. It's a shorter list with Clint. But there's some stuff they can kind of lean into around Jalen's creation that kind of really leverages that stuff too. Because if you let Jalen get to the nail, and we'll talk about Jalen's decision-making around, step backs, fadeaways, all that stuff, right? But like as a passer, and really almost to a fault, he overpasses at times when he really should be, recognizing there's a 6'4" guy that's low man. I'm just going to go put the ball right in the basket. But there's some passing equity that you can really make work with both Clint and Onyeka. Like I said, the list is shorter with Clint around the kinds of actions that will work there, but there's still something there when you need it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just think that it can be helpful for everyone. And, at the end of the day, I feel pretty good about Onyeka as an offensive player. To wrap this up, like I think that there is room for him to up his usage a little bit. We'll see. My questions are still more on the defensive end. Not that he's going to be bad, because he's never been bad defensively. It's just that, especially with a team built the way they've been built, especially right now with Trey and Bogey in your backcourt to close games, you need plus defensive center. You just have to have it. You have to. And I'm not saying he's not capable of that, but that's the area that I'm worried's the wrong word. I'm more semi-skeptical or uncertain is better. Uncertain is a better word. I just don't know where Onyeka's going to be defensively as a 28, 30-minute a game anchor at center. And the Hawks they have to have good play there defensively. I'm confident he'll be pretty good, but the gap between pretty good and like where they kind of need it to be is interesting for me for the future of him.
Yeah, to me, the obstacle to making the change, between who's starting, who's coming off the bench, has been Clint is just so much more consistent defensively.
100%.
So just absolutely reliable.
And coaches absolutely love consistency there.
They do. I know I'm going to get this, and that's something that they really prioritize. We can work on this. But Onyeka, to me, Onyeka deserves the opportunity to be able to kind of develop, through enough reps and opportunity and playing with the first, unit, all that sort of stuff, to demonstrate whether he can make progress being more consistent. Because we could talk about rebounding. That's the thing. The big disparity is consistency to me between Clint and Onyeka. And Onyeka's, like I said, that part of that is reps, part of that's role, part of that's scheme, whatever you want to chalk it up to. But the big disparity is consistency. And for Onyeka to be viable as their starter for the next 4 years, he needs to be given the opportunity to show that he can make progress being more consistent defensively. That's my view.
We are in agreement for sure. That's hopefully they'll answer that question. It'll come up again later. I'll talk about it a lot between now and an opening night, I'm sure, about starting lineups and stuff like that. I don't think it's the end of the world if they don't start Okongwu in game one. I'll be okay with that in a way that most people won't be. But even as Capella guy, I think I would just start Onyeka in game one and just see what you have and figure it out. And it doesn't mean Clint's terrible or that he will never play. And he's going to play. His other team's going to play. But I would be trying to see what you have in Onyeka. I still like him. I still believe in him as a core piece. I said what I do mean what I said earlier. I think I'd be a little bit lower on him at least than I would have been 4 years ago when they made the pick. That's fair to say. I think you don't have to agree with me, but that's where I'd be. Not a ton lower. Like if you did a redraft, we won't do that here of that draft. I would have him higher than most people would. I wouldn't have him 6th, I don't think anymore, but he would be in the lottery firmly and would still be pretty high on my list. So I'm intrigued. He's still 23. I mean, he's a young guy. He's not the reps. He's played a lot of minutes, but also not played a lot. Like we covered that ground in this podcast, but I'm still pretty upbeat about Onyeka. I just hope that I'm not upbeat a year from now. Like I think if we're doing this a year from now, he's kind of a middling season. I might be coming on here like, hey, it's kind of is what he is, guys, which is still pretty good player. But like with DeAndre Hunter, it's a different player. I'm not doing the comparison there, but there was a point where we kind of had to just raise our hand and be like, Hunter is what he is, guys. And it's not it doesn't mean he's terrible. We talked about that when we talked about that conversation, but there was always this little hope people had for DeAndre to have this big breakout, and it just never came. Okongwu might have a breakout this year. That might happen. If it doesn't happen, we might be like, okay, this is kind of what he is, and it's still a useful player, but it's a big year. I believe that it's a big year for him.
Yeah, if he's a 14-8 guy with 2.5 assists a game and is efficient,
stay on the court, don't foul out every game, and
month over month get more consistent defensively. That's a really, really good year for Onyeka. There are things I think he can do. I'm not an NBA coach, but there are things for when I watch. There are things I think he can do. To me, I'm like, let's find out if he can do those consistently. By giving him the opportunity. So that's where I am. I hope it happens for him. Even though me, I have a big place in my heart for Clint too. Always will.
I hate Clint Capella very notably. All right, that's all we have on this one, I think. Unless you have more to add, Glenn. But if not, please share, folks, where they can find all of your great work. And again, I thank you publicly on this podcast for doing all these shows with me. This is like I forgot to count them up. This has got to be 10 or 12 of these already this summer. So thank you for all this.
They're fun. They're fun conversations. It's a highlight for me. It's a great. I always love talking Hawks and basketball with you and all that stuff. So whether that's a text message or a Slack channel or here, it's always fun. ATL on 29. We're hitting about once every week and a half, I think, right now. September. So things are going to start picking up for sure.
It is September. Yes.
Right. And so, more to come there. My guys, Kevin and Tyler, love both of those guys and has so much appreciation for what they bring to the pod and stuff. But then on Twitter at Willis_Glenn, I gave a few opinions on the Falcons today. I'm going to try to be respectful, not get into super technical, stuff there, but just give more casual observation, engage and partake in the conversation, stuff like that. But for more, I guess deeper technical stuff with basketball, find me on Twitter and you can find some. If you haven't seen my David Roddy breakdown, go back and find it. It was fun.
Go back and find it. No, you and I are in the same place. You are smarter than me about basketball, generally speaking, but I know a lot more about basketball than I do about the Falcons. I'm still an above average person who knows things about the Falcons, but I'm not a football expert. I don't cover the team. I'm just a sicko. So I'll rant and rave, and I'll think because actually somebody I promise somebody during the game today replied to a tweet and was like, "Oh, Brad's going full fan," but I was like, "Yeah, I'm a Falcons fan. I'm a maniac. That's what happens." Yeah. I identify with all everybody that sends me crazy, deranged tweets during Hawks games. Looking at you, Tower Jones. I feel you during those moments when the Falcons are melting down. I have that same thought. So it is what it is.
So my experience is my brothers and I grew up watching the Braves on TBS. So the Braves are sort of a sentimental kind of experience for us. It's just me and my twin brother for the most part that are kind of invested in the Falcons. We'll tweet griping about an official's call or whatever. And
I'm sorry about that. If Falcons fandom is not for the weak at heart.
But you know me. I think getting over invested emotionally in any sports is kind of just crazy. But I still try to have fun with it. So me and my three brothers, Braves. Me and my one twin brother, Falcons. Hawk stuff. They can barely handle that stuff. Yeah. You're my basketball family, you and Kevin and Tyler and Wes and Zach and the whole rest of the crew and Rashad and everybody else. That's my basketball family. So and all the great folks on Twitter. That's my basketball family. So
absolutely, we have fun, and you are a positive spirit in the way that I am not. So I appreciate the Falcons keeping you positive because you can be positive about anything. I find, Glenn, and the Falcons would be a test for you. I have to say because
we'll see if I can make it.
Yeah,
they might tell us based on today anyway.
Oh man! All right. Well, thank you, Glenn, for being here as always. Please, everybody listening to the podcast, please subscribe to ATL129. Follow Glenn on Twitter at Willis_Glenn. Even if you can just listen to Kevin Chenard talk about stuff on the podcast. Love you, Kevin. As for everybody listening to this show, please subscribe to this show as well. If you're watching on YouTube, like the episode, like the show, you're watching it, subscribe there. Apple, Spotify, Twitter, all those places you can find it in the description. We'll have more content later on this week. Thanks to Glenn one more time, and we'll see you all next time.